Hey, it's Saturday and we're back with Woodworking with Wes. Today we're going to do a basic. One of the things that is most basic about woodworking is a box. Everything starts with a box. A drawer is a box. A cabinet is a box. A lot of furniture starts by a box. I'm going to show you some of the things that will help you make a better box. Let's start on the table saw. We're going to use our pine that we have milled to thickness. And let's get started. I want to show you a couple of things about setting up perfect corners. One of the things that you need to do always when you do a box is make sure your corners are square. And we're going to start by using our machine square. Now, machine squares are not typically used for woodworking. I like them because they are absolutely 100% accurate. And I use it for when I need to just make sure something is perfectly square. What we're going to do first is we're going to square our push fence to our blade. This is a great place to get started. I put my square against my fence. And make sure that when you square against your saw blade, that you are squaring against the blade itself and not having the teeth. If you're going to square against the teeth, you got to make sure you're touching teeth front and back. But if you're squaring to the blade, you want to make sure that you're not touching teeth front and back, because that will show that not give you a square. Have my videographer check here a little bit, and we're just a little out of square. So let's make sure that we're perfect front and back. We got a tooth there in the way. Oh, there we go. All right. Tighten her down. We're good. Okay. Our push fence is now perfectly square to our blade. Anytime you would make a square cut with your fence, now you know that you would have a perfectly square end. Now, the box that we're going to make it 5 inches high, we're going to make it 15 inches long, and we're going to make it 7.5 inches wide, so it's twice as long as it is wide. This material here, we have milled to 5/8. Our box sides and our bottom are going to be 5/8, and we're going to put a 3/4 inch top, and we'll get to that in just a minute. But the first thing we're going to do, rip our side and our end stock down to 5 inches. Now, I've already straight lined my wood, so I don't need to worry about that right now, but let's go ahead and cut our wood. Our next step is to make a miter cut on the bottom of our sides and our ends in order to receive the bottom. The bottom is going to be the same thickness of material. So first thing we need to do is set a depth with our saw blade. We're just going to lay our piece of wood up here, crank our saw blade down. And this is not an exact measurement. I want to have enough room for a good glue in when I do the back and enough to have an edge so that I don't show the bottom. But we're going to put it right there. I'm going to take another strip of this wood. I'm going to lay it up here and set the saw at the thickness of our material. And we've just used our material to set our saw, so we don't need to worry about an exact measurement there either. And we're good. The next thing we'll do is we'll make a cut. Oh, yes. All right, we're good. Lost my head there for a second, but nope, we're good. The next thing we'll do is make a single cut down the side of all our boards. Just like that. Our next step is to make a cut to complete our rabbet by turning our wood on end and resetting our saw width to the width of the little lip that we want left. And that's, let's see if that gives us a measurement. Looks to be like 3/32 of an inch. Let's set our saw at 3/32, and we'll make a preliminary cut just a little bit to see if we're close. That looks good. You can see how that completes the rabbet cut, so we'll complete it now. All right, with our rabbet cut complete, now we can cut our pieces to size. And remember, we said we were 15 inches long and 7.5 inches wide. And I'm going to show you how to set up an angle cut on your table saw that will make a perfectly square cut on the end. We're going to change our throat. We had a 0 clearance throat on. We're going to change the original metal throat that came with the saw so that we can bevel our edge. We're now getting ready to set our blade at a 45-degree angle. I purchased from Amazon this little tricky calculating device. There are several different brands. TikTok is the one that I chose after reading reviews. I like it because you turn it on. It's very simple. You turn it on, it has a magnetic base. You set it on your table saw and you zero out your little device so that it tells you now your table is at 0, and then you stick it magnetic again, put it on your saw blade, and then you turn your saw blade so that your 45 degree shows. There we are, 45. This is 45.1, but that's close enough. We're going to make a practice cut with our miter sled here. I'm going to mark a line, a square on my board, and I'm going to turn my square around both ways to make sure that it is square, and it's perfect. What we'll do is we'll make a 45 degree cut, and we'll make it so we can watch how close this is to our line. This will tell us whether or not we've got a good square cut. And it's just important to do this because if your 45 degree corners are not square, it has a tendency to tweak your box in such a way that you can never get a good square box, and you can never get all four pieces to be level and flat. This is important. I made my 45 degree cut. I left my line showing so that you could see how close we are and how that 45 degree cut parallels the line, so we know we are cutting a good square corner on our saw. We've taken the steps to make sure, and now we've ended up with the cut that we want. First thing we're going to do is make 145 cut on the end of our ends. With our 45 degree end cut on our long sides, and then we cut a 45 degree end on both sides of what's going to be our end stock. Let's set our fence at 15 inches, and this will give us an accurate cut of 15 degrees because we're going 15 degrees to the side of the box and we're doing a 45 degree end. That's how long our sides need. We're getting ready now to cut our end pieces. Because we can't use our fence, we're going to just mark it and cut to the line. I marked all the way through here for my 7.5 inch side. I also put an X on the outside so I make sure my saw blade is on the outside. I don't want to miscut. And we'll use our push fence again and just move up and nibble till we get right to the line where we want to be. Just like that. With our sides cut and our dado for the bottom all done, we can now measure for our bottom. Now this is the piece of wood we're going to use for the bottom, and in order to measure for the bottom, all we really need to do is measure from short point to short point on our rabbet cut. From right here to right here, and from right here to right here gives us the length and the width of what our bottom will be. Take our tape measure. Yeah, I'm trying to get this so you can see the best. We'll burn an inch and we'll measure out here, and we are 15 1/4. So let's mark it 15 1/4. That is going to be our length. Our width is going to be 7 3/16. So 7 3/16 by 15 1/4 will be our bottom. Let's go cut our bottom now. We have returned our blade to 90 degrees, and we're going to use our square to square up our board and cut it to width. I've got to adjust my push fence because I moved my plate over to where it would hit the saw. Now we don't want that. So let's move it back over so that it clears the saw. Put our blade down. First thing we're going to do is square up an end. Now we'll cut our board to width and then come back and cut it to length. Our width is 7 3/16. So we'll set our blade at 7 3/16. And we'll come back and measure our bottom to 15 1/4. Okay, there's our bottom. We're getting ready to glue our pieces together. The first thing we have to do is turn them over. Now I brought out my long level to use as a straight edge because I'm going to show you how to put your pieces together with just a blue tape clamp on the corners. So you lay your pieces out like they're going to go. This is going to be down here. And you take your blue tape and you put it on your straight edge and put your miter cuts that you've made up tight. And I always start with just a couple of little pieces to make sure that I'm right where I want to be. And then I take a full piece and run my whole seam, just like that. And I'll do that to each seam all the way along. With all of our seams taped together and making sure that we're perfectly flat, we can turn our boards over now and apply our glue. And basically what we want to do is we want to put a little bead of glue down the bottom of each trench. We want enough to have good glue, but not enough to have a lot of squeeze out because we don't want to have a mess on the inside of our box. We can clean it, by the way. I mean, it's not that hard to do, but I like to clean less and have the right amount of glue. And then we tip up our corners just like this. And now that corner is glued up, and that corner is glued up. And then we'll tip this piece up, and that corner is glued up. And these corners come right together and square. And there's your box right there. Let's put some blue tape on this corner to hold it together. We want to make sure we get this corner good and square, top and bottom, and there, right? And it just came together exactly the way it was supposed to. A little more blue tape in the corner. We'll turn our box over, and we'll take the floor of our box that we just cut and put it in here and check it for size. It looks as though we could be a little long. We are just a smidge long. Let's take it to the table saw and nibble a little off of the ends. We don't even want to have a measurement. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put it up tight against the blade. Now let's put it back in here. Okay, it feels like we're good and tight, like we're supposed to be. And look at that. I think we cut our floor a little narrow. We want to make sure that this keeps our box square, so we're going to push it to one corner like that. Now you can see how the square corners, we cut our box bottom a little short. We'll have to worry about that in a second. But anyway, now we know that our box is good and square, and we'll let that dry. We had cut the floor of our box just a shade too narrow. So what we're going to do to correct that is we're going to add an additional piece, glue it on. After it dries, we'll trim it to length and recut to width. And we're just going to glue this on by putting a little bead of glue along that edge, applying our add-on piece that is too wide now, and we're going to go back to our little blue tape clamps. We could use any kind of clamp we wanted. I just am going to use a blue tape clamp because I don't need anything else, actually. Okay, we have our add-on piece all glued and clamped with our blue tape. When it dries, trim. We'll sand that seam so that it doesn't show, and there we'll have a new bottom. For the lid to our little box, we have a piece of 3/4 inch pine. We're gonna cut it 1/4 of an inch larger than the measurements, and then we're going to cut a little 3/8, what they used to call a 3/8 lip. It's not a 3/8 lip, but we're gonna make a little lip cut, and I'll show you that in just a minute. So part of it sets down into the box and lips over the outside edge. If our box is 15 by 7.5, how do we end up with 15.5? Somebody didn't watch where he was putting the saw fence, and we're 15.5 inches by 7.5 inches, which doesn't really make any difference. 15.5 by 7.5. So our lid is going to be 16 inches by 8 inches. We're going to make the lip around the top of our lid basically the same way that we did the bottom by putting a rabbet cut on the underneath side. The first thing we'll do is go around and make our depth cut, and then we'll cut the lip out. Now that we have our top all cut, we'll set that off to the side and come back to our box. While we were gone, I went ahead and I cut the bottom that we had resized, glued the extra piece on. I cut it down to the size that it needed to be. I spread some glue on the inside of our bottom rabbet and glued this piece in and clamped it up. So right now our box is ready to come out of all of the clamps, including our blue tape corner clamps. Now I want to talk a little bit about the corner. This is just a 45-degree corner. I like 45-degree corners because it actually increases the gluing surface of a corner. When you do a 45-degree corner, you increase the gluing surface of a corner piece. But there are many different kinds of corners to do, and I think maybe that's a video I'll do someday, showing all the different kinds of corners that you could use on a square box. But today we're just doing the 45-degree corner. Now that we have all of our gluing done, we're ready to sand. And what we're going to do is we're just going to take our palm sander and sand our box out. With our box all sanded out, let's go back to our top. I'm going to take my trim router. I've installed a 1/4 inch round over bit, and we're going to put a 1/4 inch round over edge around the outside of our top. And now we'll sand out our top. A little bit of hand sanding on our routed edge, and our top is all finished. I'm going to also take my hand sandpaper and just break my edges on my box like that. Very simple, very quick. And there we have a beautiful little box. That's wonderful. And I tell you, learning how to make a square box, learning how to keep corners square, keeping your box level, it is so basic to almost everything you're going to do. So learn the basics, your jobs will do better, and we'll see you next Saturday on Woodworking with Wes.